Yeah, hello guys. Once again, this is Kwakwa Jr. And as promised, today we are discussing how to start your shading. So before you start your shading, there are some of the things you should know, or some of the things you should look out for before you start your shading. So I'm going to discuss with you some of the things you should look out for before you start your shading. Okay. All right. Okay, can you hear me? If you can, please let me know. Before you start your shading, there are some of the things you should do. Every picture is different. Right? Different in what sense? Every picture has a different lighting set altogether. We discussed lighting the last time we met. We talked about some light. We have the butterfly lighting that has the shadow, the light coming from above. So usually with the butterfly, you usually have the shadows beneath your nose, under the lips, and beneath the eye. That is what we call the butterfly lighting. Then we talked about the side lighting, where the light source is coming from one side of the face. So you usually have the shadows on the other side of the light source, or the opposite side of the light source. Okay, all right. So now, after knowing your light source, where your light is coming from, you should know how you're going to approach your shading. First thing I usually do is first study your picture. If you say, let's say you have your picture down, you have to study your picture, know where your light source is coming from. After knowing it, you just have to imagine how you are going to render your portrait or the drawing. Do you understand me, please? Every drawing is different. So let's say the person is wearing a particular kind of dress. Before you even start, you should be able to imagine and think how you are going to render the shirt. You should have to pay attention to the eye. Does the person have a different kind of eyebrow? Does the person have, every eye is different. What kind of eye does the person have? How is the person's face like? Does he have some pimples on the face? How is he posing? These are some of the things you should look out for. So after noticing all these, you have to imagine or think through how you're going to do it, even before you put down your pencil to do your first shade. Do you understand me? That's right. So that's the first thing you should do. Imagine how you are going to render the drawing. Being it the shirt, the beard, the mouth. Does he have lip gloss on? Is the lips shiny? Is the teeth showing? How are you going to render the teeth? How are you going to render the nose? What kind of skin does he have? You have to imagine. Once you are able to imagine, it gives you that confidence that you'll be able to do it. So when it comes to portraits, it's all about confidence. If you don't have the confidence, forget it. Because you might start a work and along the line lose the confidence and might not get the work done. So first thing you have to do, after noticing your shadows, your light areas and all that in mind, you have to close your eyes. Think through how you're going to render each and every element or every feature on the face. Do you understand me? Once you start thinking, the clues will start coming. How it will come automatically. This eye is like this. Do I have to lay down first shadow? Maybe I'll lay down first shadow, then bring out the highlight. Okay, this is how I'm going to render this part. Maybe the shirt is glossy, so how am I going to render it? I'll first have a mid-tone layer, then I'll go in for the shadows, and then bring out the highlights. So before you even start drawing, imagine through how you're going to render every feature on the face, or even render the drawing as a whole. Do you get me? Okay, so after imagining, let's say the drawing or the picture has a shadow, has a background. if your drawing has a background, or if the picture has a background, the first thing to render is the background. Sometimes you find people drawing, and after trying to do the background, you realize there is some hollow or light area around the edge of the drawing. Do you get me? This usually happens if you don't work on the background first, because you realize after drawing, you try to work on the background, and you realize that side of the very close part of the shadow to the closest part of the drawing, I mean the outline, to the background doesn't really pick the graphite. So you realize around the edges are lighter compared to the other side of the background, like the other part of the background. So to avoid this, first work on the background. Make sure that your graphite or whatever you're using fills even the closest part, let's say the edges of the drawing. I don't know if you really get what I'm trying to say. Usually, let's say this is the subject. Usually you have a drawing. You first do your outline. After shading, you realize that after shading and doing your background, you realize that there's a light area around the edges of the portrait, and it doesn't really work well. Okay, so to avoid that light edge around your portrait, first work on your background and make sure all this part, or the closest part, the background that is attached to the subject is filled. Do you understand me? Once you fill that part with the background, then you go ahead and then do or draw the main subject. If you do it that way, you realize that there's no white edge or anything behind the drawing. Let me show you, let me give you an example here. You'll be able to see. I'm going to show you a work with a background. Okay. Alright. So, do you see this work? This is what I'm talking about. If you see this particular picture, you realize that the background is shaded. The background is shaded. But look at the area around the edges, the edge of the hair, the edge of the ear, the edge of this side. You realize that it all fits in. There's no hollow or light area around that edge. Why? Because I first did the background. I first shaded the background first. I first did the background, and then I shaded the main drawing. So there is one thing you have to do. If your drawing has a background, first do your background. That is right. And then there's a particular thing, right? Now we are using this particular drawing. There's a particular principle in art that we usually use when it comes to portraiture, and that is contrast. What is contrast? Contrast is the sharp difference between your light area and then your highlight. Your light area and then your shadows. That is contrast. So black and white are two contrasting colors. Usually black and white are not really colors, but if I should say what is the contrast of black, you are going to say is white. Green is contrast to red. Do you understand me? So contrast is the main thing we usually look at when we are doing portraiture. Why? When you're able to do your contrast well, one, it's going to help you, give you the guidelines. Do you understand me? Let's say you are drawing the eye. What you have to do is to first shade the darkest part of the eye. If you're able to shade the darkest part of the eye, it's going to guide you for you to know that yes, the eye shouldn't go beyond this area or not. I don't know if you understand me. Let's say you have an eye. You are drawing the eye. The first thing to draw is the part of the eye. The first thing to really shade is the darkest part of the eye, like this. Do you see what I'm showing you? That's the first part to shade. And then you shade your pupil. The reason is, if you don't shade this darkest part first, as you draw, you might go beyond this eye. So if you're not careful, you realize that the eye is not supposed to be big, but after you drawing, your eye becomes bigger or wider. So one thing you have to do, first get your darkest part of the eye first. If you have the darkest part of the eye, it will guide you. It will serve as a guideline so that you don't go beyond the dark part of the eye. Do you get me? That's right. So that's one thing you have to do. First, start with your darkest point. So I'm going to show you an example of a work that I did, that I started with the darkest point. Let's check out this work, the work I did recently. Give me a second and let me show you one thing. So just a second, please. I'm coming. I should have put down this, but just give me a second. I'm coming right now. I want to give you an example of what I'm trying to say so that it becomes easier for you, okay? So this is what I'm trying to say. By first getting your darkest part of the drawing first. So if you look at the side of this particular drawing, you will realize that I first did that part of the, you see, the side of the cheeks. Look at, you see, is a female. Look at the side here. I first shaded that side dark because that's the hair. So looking at the drawing, that's the darkest part of the picture. So what did I first do? Before I even shaded the eye or the cheek, this or the cheek here, I first shaded that side black. And what is the purpose of me getting that side black? That once I'm able to do this, it guides me for me to know that no matter how dark the cheek should be, it shouldn't be as dark as the hair, which is the darkest part of the drawing. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Do you get me? Alright, so this is the approach you should use when you want it to become easier for you, especially when you are a beginner. First, make sure that you establish the darkest part of the drawing. First, establish that darkest part, and that will serve as a guideline for you to know that one, your drawing or the cheek shouldn't go beyond the darkest part. So it serves as a guide to you. And two, it serves as a guide for you when you are doing your midtones or your highlight. That no matter how dark or how strong your midtone or light the midtone is, it can never be as dark as the hair. Do you get me? So you should start from the darkest point. So if you are drawing the mouth, especially something like this, you realize, just look at her smile. If you are not careful, as you draw, you might go beyond the corners of the mouth. That angle there, if you're not careful, you go beyond that angle. And the moment you go beyond that angle, the expression of the face is going to change. So for you to be in check, first thing you have to do is to first establish that darkest part of the lips or the mouth. And that is going to guide you that no matter what, the mouth should fall within this darkest point. Do you understand, please? So this is basically how I go about a drawing. First, establish your darkest point, and your darkest point is going to guide you to know the right value to use. Do you understand, please? Looking at this part, just look at this drawing too. You realize, as I told you earlier, I told you to first work on your background. So you see, this I first work on the background. After working on the background, you can then work on the subject. So you realize that your subject will fall on the background, so there wouldn't be like any bleeds or any blood bleeds around the subject. Understood? All right, let me see if I can get another example to show you. I used the same approach for this picture. This is one picture that has a lot of shadows. So if you are not very careful, you will draw the picture and the picture might look lighter or darker compared to what compared to your reference picture. So one thing you have to do is first establish the shadow areas, the darkest parts of the drawing. After getting your shadow areas, you should first start from one side. And usually when you're drawing, start from your shadow area. First make sure the darkest part is established. Then you start working around that area. Once the darkest part is established, you'll be able to know how dark or light that place should be. Do you get me? So let me zoom out on this picture for you to see. So let's put this picture here. All right, so this is what I mean. You see, there's one side of the cheek here. Okay, I first did that side of the face. I think there's another picture that I can use for you to get it, for you to understand it well. A minute, please. Just a minute. Let me bring down another picture. Just a minute, okay? I'm looking for a particular picture, but I'm not finding it. Okay, let me use this one. So do you see this picture? Oh, it's not bright as I want. So if you look at this particular picture too, you realize that I first established that the darkest part of the face, and that part of the face is to guide me to know where exactly the face will fall within. It serves as a guide to me, and it is also to help me to know how dark or light the face should be, comparing my highlights to my midtones and even my shadows. Understood, please? Okay, so this is how I go about it. All right. So I've talked about you having your guides. Your guide is the darkest, first establishing your darkest part. So let's say let's concentrate on the eye now. So if I'm to draw the eye, the first thing I usually do is to shade the darkest part of the eye. See the corners, so that I know the exact shape the eye will be falling into, or the exact space. And then I go on to my eyebrow, the pupil. Okay, so the pupil is going to let me know how dark the shadow beneath my eye will be. So whatever it takes, I know that the shadows here shouldn't be as dark as the pupil. Okay, so let's say I'm shading this part of the eye. So how do I start? First thing, I shade the darkest part here. And how does it help me? It helps me, it serves as a guide to me to know that no matter how dark the shadows beneath here is, it shouldn't be as dark compared to this side. And I shade the darkest part of this side too. You see, and I go on to shade this side, that line, the eyelid here, and then I shade my shadows. So once you are able to shade your shadows, I mean the darkest part, then you start building in your midtones. Because once you have the darkest part established, getting the midtones becomes easier for you, because you'll be able to judge right that comparing the I don't know, do you get me? Once you have the darkest part on point, you'll be able to judge right how dark or how light your midtone should be. And then the lights, your highlight is the last thing you do. So you first get your shadows, then you get your midtones, and then you bring out your highlights. So I'll use this approach in every feature of the face. So if I'm to draw the nose, what is the first thing I do? I first get the shadow here on point. I first draw or establish the shadows here. And these shadows will guide me. It will help me to know that no matter what, the mid-tone here shouldn't go beyond this one or this dark tone. I'll first get my shadow here. So at least I'll have the space my nose will fall within. At the same time, the value of the shadow is going to help me judge right how the mid-tones is going to be judge right the value of the mid-tones. Do you understand? The same thing happened with the mouth. If I'm to draw the mouth, I'll first establish the corners of my mouth here, this corner and this corner. So no matter what, I know that the mouth falls within these 2 points. Do you understand? I will know that the mouth will fall within these 2 points, right? And the next thing to do is to establish that shadow here. After establishing that shadow, the mouth, this part of the mouth always has a shadow. Then I will establish that one too. So doing this will help me get the shape of the mouth right. The mouth wouldn't look smaller or bigger at the end of the day because you're able to work within the space or the shape, the actual shape of the mouth. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so using this principle, you can get your drawing on point. The eye is going to be in shape because you are going to, it is going to fall within the actual size of the reference picture. The same with the nose is going to be in shape because it's going to fall within the actual size of the reference picture. The same thing with the mouth. Understood? Alright. If you're able to get this thing right, it is a good start from there. So let's go back again and then recap what I've said. Last week we learned about getting your shadows, noticing your shadows. So from this picture, or just from my face, this is my light source and this is my shadow area. What happens? How do I start this drawing? Let's assume I'm drawing my face. The first thing I will do is to draw my background. Understood? Once I draw my background, I'll be able to avoid that hollow white edge around the subject after drawing. The reason why that thing comes is after drawing, you try to draw the background, but the graphite or the charcoal wouldn't be able to get to the edge of the subject. So it creates that white edge around the drawing. To avoid this, first do your background. And then make sure that the background fills all that place around the outline before you actually start the shading. Do you get me? So I've shown you one, how to get rid of that hollow or that light edge around the subject if your drawing has a background. Okay, so right now we have our background drawn. What do you do next? The shadows is coming from this side. So what is the first thing for me to do? I will first establish my shadow area. Once I establish my shadow area, it's going to guide me to know how dark my midtone should be or how light my midtone should be. Mind you, this side of the eye of the face that faces the light source also has a midtone, but you see the midtone here is darker compared to the side, to this side, to this side's midtone. So that is what you have to do. Establish your shadow area. You shouldn't try to make it so dark, but make sure you establish that shadow area. All right. And if I'm to draw the eye, first thing you should do is to get your guides. How do you get your guides? Is by first establishing the darkest part of the eye. So I'll first shade this side here. It might not be very dark, but for me to get the guide right, I'll first shade this side. I'll first shade the line here. Okay, then shade my pupil. Right, this is going to guide me to know how dark or light the midtone here should be. Then I'll establish my shadow here, and this side is also a shadow. If I establish my shadow here, I'll know that this shadow is darker than maybe this side. So establishing your shadow first serves as a guide for you to know how dark or light your midtone should be. And after getting your midtone right, and then your shadows beneath here, you pick your highlight. The highlight should be the last thing you should do. And you can pick your highlight with your needed eraser. In the case that the highlight is very, very harsh, you can pick it with your Tombow Mono Zero eraser. Understood, please? Alright, so you see the same approach we use for the eye is the same approach you will use for the nose. If you are to draw the nose, first establish the shadow in the hole, and then beneath the nose here, the shadow here. once you're able to do this, it will serve as a guide for you to know where the nose will fall within. In this case, your nose is not going to look bigger or smaller, because you're able to establish the space the nose should fall within. The same thing with the mouth. Okay, before you start drawing the mouth, first establish the corners of the mouth, and that side is very dark. You see, it's in the corner. The light doesn't really reach there. So first establish these 2 points. Establishing these 2 points will guide you to know that no matter what, the mouth should fall within these 2 points. So at the end of the day, if you draw and the mouth go beyond this side, then you didn't set your guides right. What is it going to do? It's going to distort the resemblance. So to maintain the resemblance of the mouth compared to, with reference to the picture or the reference picture, first get your guides on. Establish that shadow part here, or the darkest part here. Then you will know that no matter what, the mouth should fall within these 2 points. You establish the shadow, the line here, so you know that the upper part of the lip shouldn't go beyond this line. Then you establish that shadow here. Okay, if you're able to do this, you always get your mouth, the size of your mouth right, and then you establish that shadow beneath here. You see, establishing these shadows or these contrasting values will always put you in check. You will know that the mouth, no matter what, should fall within the space. Understood, please? The same thing with the chin. Let's say there's a chin here, or I'm drawing this side of my face. Look at this particular picture. Let's go back to this picture again. You realize that I first established the lower part of the chin, and that side of the chin that is in shadow. Once you first establish that lower part of the chin, or that lower part of the shadow, it is going to guide you for you to know that no matter what, the size of the face should fall within that space of the shadow, or that space of the dark tones you have established. Do you understand me, please? All right, so look at the heart. Focus on the heart. You realize before I even drew the heart, I first established the darkest part of the heart. You will see that there's a dark line or a small shade I have established on the heart. Do you understand? So this side or this shade will serve as a guide for me. Let's look at the final drawing of the picture of the final work here. So you see, look at the final work. You see, let's concentrate on the heart. You realize that because I first established the darkest part of my heart, the value in the shadow is not as dark compared to that value of the heart that is facing us. I mean the top part of the heart. And what really guided me is the first shadow I first established. Do you understand, please? So it's like that. First get your shadows on point. First establish your shadows, and then from there you can get your highlights done, your midtones, and then the last thing will be your highlights. Do you understand me, please? Yeah, Coach Prince. Please let me know if you understand me. Please let me know. Okay. I think I've gone through what I want to teach today. I think we are done with. I've gone through all the points I wanted to teach you today. Before you start drawing, how do you start your shading? At least I've given you the basic tips that will guide you to know how to start your shading. First thing, before you start your shading, imagine in your head how you are going to render your drawing. Imagine in your head how you are going to render the eye, the nose, the lips, the eye, the beard, or the hair. Okay, once you imagine that, I taught you last week that you should be able to tell where your light source is coming from. After establishing your light source, you will get to know that the light source, your shadows, rendering your shadows in the light source is really going to make your work solid or look natural. After doing that, if your work has a background, please first do your background first. Don't say you are drawing and then after drawing you do your background. First do your background first. It will help you avoid that hollow light around the edges of the drawing. And the next thing to do, establish your darkest point. It is going to serve as a guide for you to know establish a specific space or a designated space each feature of the face should fall within. If you are drawing the eye, establish the corner of the eye here, establish the corner of the eye here, establish that shadow side of the eye, your pupil, establish that shadow here. This is going to guide you into how big, or to guide you into the exact shape of the eye, and then to be able to establish the right values. The same thing should happen to the nose, the mouth as well. First establish your corners, your shadow areas, the lips. Before you bring in, you actually draw your midtones and your highlight. Okay, the highlight should be the last thing to do. If the highlight is very strong and white, and you don't have a very good eraser, please leave that side white. If your eraser is strong, or if there are some midtones you will need to pick, it should be the last thing you should do. After establishing your shadow areas, building your midtones, then you bring out your highlights with your needed eraser. If it is very strong, you can go in with your Tombow Mono Zero eraser. You understand me, please? So these are the basic tips that can guide you into how to actually start your shading. If you have all these things in place, your shading becomes easier and straightforward for you. You don't have to be thinking how you're going to do this and that. You know, if you have these basic principles in place, your shading is going to be easy and straightforward for you. All right. Please, if you can and if you want to, you can share the links into the art groups we have for other people to benefit from this teaching. Maybe I'm not very good vocally, but I believe I've been able to explain myself for you to understand what I'm trying to say. Right. If you have any question, please let me know. And then right after the questions, answering the questions, we will end this session here. I will upload it on my YouTube channel for you to watch later in case you didn't get anything, especially those of you who couldn't come earlier. So please let me know if you have any other question. You can type it at the section, the comment section, and I will respond to each of your questions. If there's something you want me to clarify again, maybe you didn't, I wasn't able to really explain for you to get, please let me know, then I will recap it again. Is there anything you don't understand? Let me know and then I will recap it again. What I thought about today is, let me recap it again. Then after I'm done, there's no question, so let me go back to what I've actually explained today. I said contrast is a principle that you need to really pay attention to when it comes to portraiture. Before you start your shading, first know where your shadow areas is, know where your light source is. With this in mind, it will guide you to know to establish the form. It will guide you to know your form. I mean, render your form correctly. Do you get me? Do your background first. Establish your darkest point of your areas. That will serve as a guidelines for you. Bring in your midtones, and then the last thing you have to do is your highlight. If your highlight is very strong, please don't try picking it out with the mono eraser. Leave that section white and shade around it. If it's not strong, especially this side of the nose, it's always advisable to pick this side with your needed eraser. If I'm to pick the highlight on my chin, I'll do it with the needed eraser. Do you understand me, please? So with this approach, you use it for any feature on the face. Alright. If I'm drawing the mouth, I'll first get my darkest point right. It's going to serve as a guideline to me on the right value of the mid-tone. And then it's going to serve as a guideline to me for me to know that no matter what, the mark is supposed to fall within this space. And yeah, one thing I almost forgot. Please, if you are drawing, try as much as possible to avoid sharp lines. Do you understand me, please? So as I was saying, even if you are doing the shadow at this side of the eye, please, it shouldn't be sharp. Try as much as possible and avoid very, very sharp lines when it comes to doing portraiture. Always get a hairy line. I don't know if you understand hairy. The lines or your shade should be hairy. It shouldn't be sharp. Sometimes people try to bring out the shadows here. This shadow is not sharp. It's a little blur. So please try and avoid very sharp lines. It should be sharp only if it's very, very obvious in your reference picture. But as much as you can, try and avoid very, very sharp, like sharp blade light lines. Okay. When you're drawing the pupil, the edge of the pupil shouldn't be very sharp. It's a little blur. It should shade. It should be hairy blur. Like it should be a hairy line. See that circle on the eye? It shouldn't be very sharp. That line at the eyelid here, it shouldn't be sharp. The line beneath the nose here, it shouldn't be sharp, please. So try as much as possible to avoid very sharp lines. At least try and get that hairy, shady that you see. You get what I mean? Yeah. All right. Kojo Pencil is asking me when I started portraiture. I started portraiture in 2011. Although I had been drawing, but when it comes to actually doing like proper portraiture, I started in 2011. If you watch my interview with the Showers TV guy, I talked about, he asked me a couple of questions about how I started it and how I got into drawing. I started in 2011, so let's say maybe a decade. Yeah, a decade. Yeah. When it comes to the experience, I have the experience. Trust me. There are a lot of things you should know. And as time goes on, I think the first video we did, I mentioned some topics that we'll be dealing with from week or 2 weeks, from week as time goes on. So we will be doing that. Okay. Yeah. We will be doing that from time to time. So I think I'll end today's session. I'll put it on my YouTube channel. So if you don't understand anything, just put a question in the comment section and then I'll get back to you. All right. Please, if you can, share into your art groups, share it on your walls, in your WhatsApp groups, and your Facebook groups, and I'll be very grateful. Maybe this is one thing you can do to help me. I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, so if you can, please help me do that. All right, I'm not trying to force anybody or impose it on anybody, but if you can, and if you want to be part of the journey, please, let's try and get people on board for them to also benefit from this. All right, thank you very much. And yeah, don't forget, my name is Kwakwa Junior Anthony. I am an artist, and I'm a great man. Thank you very much. Bye.